Welcome everybody to our very first episode of The Leadership Equation. And I'm Roger Francis. I have the pleasure of being your host as we go through this podcast and future episodes. I thought it would be important for us, more actually important for me, to share with the audience a little bit of who I am. Now, I think there's two aspects to things. There's what I do and what I've done, and then there's who I am and why I'm wired a certain way. And really the objective of this overall podcast. I'll start off with the end, then I'll get into more of the personal pieces if that's okay with this audience. But this podcast is all about growth. It's all about starting a conversation. And that conversation centers around a question that I'm sure everyone's thought of. Why do some leaders inspire extraordinary results in extraordinary people, while others struggle despite having the same resources? What's the difference? And that's what we're going to explore as part of our podcast. And we're going to go deep. This podcast is not going to be a lollipop and bubblegum. We're not going to tiptoe through the tulips. We're going to have some candid conversations around leadership. And the concept that I'm going to introduce to this group is the title of our podcast. It's called The Leadership Equation. And I think this leadership equation is critical now more than any other time for a series of reasons that I'll go into. But as you think about the leadership equation, I want you to think about two systems being at play. Whether over the 25 years that I've had, whether I've sat in boardrooms or break rooms, I've been part of conversations where organizations are talking about, hey, we have the right strategy, we've mastered strategy, we've optimized processes, we've invested in technology. But the question that is similar across all of these industries and companies are, why aren't we really delivering the results based off of the investments that we're making? And that key difference, I believe, is that the leadership we have is critical to take strategy from the boardroom and implement it in the break room. So the leadership equation is very simple. It's IQ plus EQ equals outcomes. And I think that's a very important equation for us to understand, and understand that the variables aren't created equally. There are times that one has to be optimized and one has to be sub-optimized. Especially as a leader, you have to understand both. So that's this whole podcast. That's what we're going to be centering on. Two main systems. The capital system, which is all about delivering results that are really important. Strategies matter. Execution matters. That matters to the streets. That matters to the shareholders. That cannot be compromised. And then there's a human system. The system that takes that strategy and actually brings it to life through the people that we have the privilege of leading. And that's an important aspect, and that's an important variable in this equation. So that set aside, I just shared with you what this is all about. It's about the conversation. And I want everybody to join this conversation. Everyone has a seat at the table as we talk about maximizing our performance and closing the gap in leadership that exists between intelligence and impact. Now let me share with you who I am. And who I am comes before what I've done, what I'm capable of doing. Let me put it that way. Because who I am is how I've been wired. You could argue this is a little bit about nurture and nature. At the core of who I am is I'm a son of immigrants. I'm one of three boys born to a set of immigrants who fled Beirut in the early to mid 70s to create a better life, not for themselves, but for the future of the next generation. They fled. My dad had an 8th grade education, didn't speak the language, $100 in his pocket, and a borrowed airline ticket. He was 28. My mom was 18. Knew nobody. Just immigrated. Now, I'm lucky, and when my father passed away 3 years ago, I walked into my boys' room and said to them, I said to Pearson Press, and I said, boys, je do it past. I said to them, I'm like, I need you to remember one thing. I need you to remember that we are here and standing on the shoulders of previous generations that allow us to stand at this height. Let's not take that for granted. So I am a son of immigrants, and I learned a lot from my parents. I'm one of 3 boys. I'm wedged in the middle. You could say whatever you want to say about middle children, but being a son of immigrants and being the middle child has taught me a lot of things that I take and put into practice at work. One of those lessons is growing up, and I don't care if you're in any immigrant family, you know education is the most important thing. And the results that you deliver are based off of the report cards that you bring home. And so at an early age, my brothers and I would compete with each other for the best grades. But as we grew up, we actually learned that it wasn't about competing with each other. It was actually more about competing for each other. And that's a concept I take into practice across any company that I've worked with, across any industries. In today's world, we know that we have to attack silos that exist within organizations. Yet those silos are built because either goals aren't aligned or purpose of the organization isn't understood. It's better for us as an organization and as leaders within an organization to compete for the organization rather than with other departments in the organization. And when we're able to do that, we're able to differentiate ourselves from the competition. And that means at times sub-optimizing one part to maximize the whole. I'm a husband. I'm a husband to my wife, Tiffany, for 22 years. I haven't done things always the right way. But leadership is not about being perfect. It's not about proving yourself. It's about improving yourself. Not just when times are great, but when times are tough. And Tiffany's been the bedrock of our family for the entire course of our marriage for 22 years. Always saying, wherever we want to go, wherever we move, whenever the move comes, I'll be there. Home is where we're at. Last but certainly not least, I'm a father. I'm a father to 2 boys. I mentioned Pierce and Preston earlier. Pierce is 20 and Preston is 19. What those boys have taught me is the importance of situational leadership. The way I deliver feedback to one cannot be the same as I do to the other. I have to be able to flex my approach to optimize the potential of those boys. It's not about getting feedback off my chest. It's about how that feedback is received. So at the core of who I am, it's simple. I'm a son of immigrants. I'm a brother, I'm a husband, and I'm a father. And that experience, that early upbringing has formed leadership principles that I take to work every single day. And I apply them and I share them. Because I think one of the most important things as a leader to do is to be transparent and show people how you think, and more importantly, why you think a certain way. If you don't show them that, if you don't express that, the team will fill in the gray area and could misinterpret intent. So let me share some of the leadership principles with you. 1, I think energy is infectious and it's contagious. We've all been around energy suckers. Right? You go in there and it's just like, oh my God, I am drained. That does not bode well for an organization. I think energy needs to be infectious. It needs to be contagious. That means me as a leader I have to allow my team to plug into me and fill their tanks to be able to go out there and do the work and bring the strategy to life. Even if I'm exhausted. That is my role to play, okay? That doesn't mean it's cheerleading. It means providing open, honest, candid feedback, alignment, and being accessible to when the team needs me and in any form that the team needs me to be. So that's one of my leadership beliefs. Another leadership belief that I have is that the body takes the position the mind is thinking. You ever see a race in the Olympics or in a track meet. They're sprinting or they're coming to the line, and you see that photo finish where the head is leaned over or the foot is stuck out. What's that athlete trying to do? They're just trying to break the plane. You think the body does that automatically? It doesn't. The brain is telling the body to do that, to win. So I think that one of the most important things to do is understanding the power of mindset. If I set an opportunity, if I set an obstacle right here in front of you today that was 3 pounds and 15 centimeters long and ask you to move this obstacle, how fast you would move it. Heck, I'd put my phone on this table right now and say, hey, move this phone. You'd tell me that you could launch this phone across the room in 2 seconds. Well, folks, the human brain weighs 3 pounds and is 15 centimeters long. And yet it is the largest obstacle in the world to move. When you figure out how to move that, you could move anything. And I'm a true believer that the body takes the position the mind is thinking. If you say you can, you will. When you say you can't, you won't. Those are just 2 leadership beliefs that I have over a series of 10 total leadership beliefs. And I think that that's a lot of the things that recognize me. I mentioned earlier that leadership isn't about proving yourself, it's about improving yourself. But this podcast is not about me professing my perfection, because the Lord knows I am not perfect, not quite yet. Okay? There are mistakes that I've made over the 25 plus years that I remember. I have recognized that the hardest challenges that I've had in life have taught me the most. I'll share with you my first big lesson in leadership, and it came at an early age. I was 26 years old. I got a call from, at that point in time, I was a new leader with CVS Health, and I got a call from the senior vice president while I was on a store walk at store 8300 in Detroit. And the senior vice president says, hey, Raj, we have this acquisition coming up in California. This was in 2006. The reason I remember it was in 2006, it was around March of 2006, is because Pierce was born in February of 2006. I got this call. The senior vice president, Hanley at the time, said to me, he goes, Raj, we'd like you to become a director of pharmacy operations and go out west and help us with acquisition. When I got the phone call, I said to Hanley right then and there, I said, Hanley, we'll do it. And I'll never forget what Hanley said to me. He goes, Raj, you should check with your wife. Pierce wasn't even a month old, but I knew what Tiff was going to say. She was going to say, let's chase it down. Let's go do it. And so that's exactly what we did. We packed up Pierce and we moved to California, our first big move. One of the biggest mistakes that I made was not understanding the culture. People say culture eats strategy all day. It absolutely does. It eats strategy, it eats strategies, grandparents, it does everything. If you're not picking up on the culture of an organization, well, then good luck. But I remember this conversation because I went from succeeding and having some of the best results in the organization in my previous role to having the worst performance of my entire career. Bottom of the organization. And I remember talking to a pharmacy supervisor of mine, Ken Morris, who I stay in touch with. I said, Ken, why do you think we're struggling? And Ken looks at me. Keep in mind, he's a new direct report to me. And he looks at me with courage. He says, that's an easy question to answer. I said, then tell me, Ken, why? He goes, because we don't know you. See, I thought early on in my career, there was an image for a director of pharmacy operations. I thought you had to look a certain way, act a certain way. And I wasn't showing up with my authentic self and being able to relate. So I could have been the smartest person in the room. Didn't matter. I knew everything about CVS at that point in time, the acquiring company. I had all the information, but it didn't matter because I hadn't spent enough time understanding the culture of that organization and having the right level of EQ to be able to motivate the team to want to follow. So Ken, wherever you're at, I know you're doing well, but I want to thank you for that lesson early in my career, and I've taken that lesson with me everywhere that I've gone. Whether it was the 9 moves that came after that, the organization changes that I've had the pleasure of going into, I've always understood and reflected on that feedback that you gave. So Ken, thank you very much with where you're at, or what you provided and the guidance that you've provided. It's been very important to my career trajectory. That's a little bit of who I am and what I've learned along the way, and there's multiple mistakes that I've made. I've had the pleasure, as I said earlier, to sit across and in boardroom tables and executive leadership teams across different industries, whether it was healthcare, whether it was retail, whether it was distribution, whether it was food services. And I could tell you that there's a common thread across both, across all industries. Every organization in every industry is looking for ways to maximize returns, to deliver, to differentiate. And the entire central idea of what we're talking about in this episode and on the leadership equation centers in around IQ and EQ, working together to maximize results. Don't care how smart your strategy is. If the human capital that you have within your organization doesn't believe in it, doesn't understand their roles in it, then that strategy is going to sit on the paper that it was written on and not translate into the P&L. So the central thesis around this conversation isn't about the strategy. It's about aligning that strategy with the human capital to deliver it. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about and talking through as we get together each and every single episode. If this is a topic that intrigues you, if you want to join the conversation, then go back to my point. The body takes a position, the mind is thinking. Do it. Don't wait, just do it. 3 ways you could get involved. 3 ways you could get engaged. 1, pick up a copy of The Integrated Leader. It's on Amazon. It's a quick read. I've been there. I've read leadership books, and they've all helped me. But this was built to be able to be a tool, a guide for leaders to understand how to leverage IQ and EQ to drive organizational performance. Pick up a copy. Send me your feedback on it. Join the conversation. 2, get on YouTube. Subscribe to The Leadership Equation on YouTube. Set up notifications so that when episodes drop, you are kept informed on what's happening and what we're talking about. Because this conversation is not going to be about roses. We're going to have that candid conversation. Why? Because at the end of the day, results matter. How we deliver those results from the strategy, from the IQ, leveraging EQ is what we will focus in on. And the third way you could engage with me directly via LinkedIn, because I want to hear about your stories. I want to hear about your struggles. I want to hear and learn from you. The most important thing to be as a leader is curious. And to be curious, you need to get perspectives and different insights. So I want to hear from you. So if this topic interests you, join the conversation. And I welcome it. I welcome it. Until we meet again, I want this group to understand a couple things and keep things in perspective here. 1, there are always 2 systems at play. There's that capital system and there's that human system. The way great leaders deliver results is they understand how to leverage both systems to produce the outcomes. So with that said, this is going to be The Leadership Equation. I'm your host, Roger Francis. Thank you very much for joining. We'll talk soon.